Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into humanity's oldest and most universally annoying bedtime companion, snoring. The thunderous nocturnal symphony that's been destroying sleep and relationships since Grok first figured out how to lie down and breathe loudly enough to wake a saber-toothed tiger. So before we journey through 50,000 years of desperate remedies and failed cures, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually want to hear more stories about humanity's most persistent failures. And drop a comment about the worst snoring situation you've ever endured, because misery loves company. Now grab your favorite pillow, maybe some earplugs, and let's explore the delightfully futile history of trying to sleep peacefully near other humans. So you think your partner's snoring is bad? Sweet summer child, you haven't heard anything yet. Picture this, it's 50,000 BCE, and Grok has just invented the wheel, discovered fire, and figured out how to make cave paintings that don't look like abstract vomit. Life is good. The saber-toothed tigers are keeping their distance, the mammoth steaks are perfectly charred, and the tribe is finally getting some decent sleep in their cozy cave. Then Grok opens his mouth to breathe and produces a sound that makes the nearby volcano seem like a gentle whisper. Congratulations, humanity. You've just been introduced to your oldest, most persistent, and most universally annoying companion, snoring. Not the plague, not war, not even your mother-in-law's cooking. Snoring. The one thing that has united every culture, every civilization, and every poor soul who has ever had to share sleeping quarters with another human being since the dawn of time. You thought death and taxes were the only certainties. Think again. Snoring is the true universal constant. It transcends language, culture, social class, and even species. From the moment humans figured out how to lie down and close their eyes, someone nearby was being kept awake by the dulcet tones of their neighbor's nasal orchestra. And unlike other annoying human habits, this one comes with a bonus: the snorer is completely oblivious to their crime against humanity. But here's the beautiful irony. While Grok is sawing logs loud enough to wake the dead, he's sleeping like a baby, peaceful, serene, probably dreaming about successfully hunting a particularly elusive rabbit. Meanwhile, his cave mate Thog is wide awake, staring at the cave ceiling, contemplating whether it would be socially acceptable in their primitive society to smother Grok with a mammoth hide. This, dear friends, is where our story truly begins. The ancient Mesopotamians, those overachievers who gave us writing, the wheel, and the first recorded complaints about literally everything, were naturally the first to document the horror of nighttime nasal symphonies. Clay tablets from around 2000 BCE don't just contain epic poems and legal codes. Oh no. They contain what might be humanity's first recorded noise complaints. Enlil the baker produces sounds in sleep that frighten the dogs and wake the children, reads one particularly desperate complaint. The gods surely curse him with demons in his nose. These weren't just casual observations. The Mesopotamians took their sleep seriously, probably because they spent their days building ziggurats and dodging various apocalyptic deities who had anger management issues. When someone's snoring was keeping the entire neighborhood awake, it became a community problem. Villagers would hold councils to discuss the curse of the night thunder, as they poetically called it. Solutions ranged from the practical, move the snorer to the edge of town, to the supernatural, elaborate rituals involving burning herbs and chanting to appease whatever demon had obviously taken up residence in the offender's throat. The Mesopotamian approach to treating snoring was, shall we say, creative. They believed the condition was caused by evil spirits who crawled into people's mouths while they slept and decided to throw a party in their windpipes. The cure. Obviously, you had to make the mouth an inhospitable environment for partying demons. This involved sleeping with various combinations of herbs stuffed in the nostrils, bitter oils painted on the tongue, and in extreme cases, small clay figurines placed in the mouth to confuse the demons into thinking the person was already possessed. Did it work? Well, define work. Did it stop snoring? Probably not. Did it make sleeping even more uncomfortable and potentially dangerous? Absolutely. But did it give everyone else in the village something to laugh about? You bet. Nothing says community bonding like watching your neighbor try to sleep with a tiny clay demon warrior lodged between their molars. The ancient Egyptians, not to be outdone by anyone in the let's overcomplicate everything department elevated snoring treatment to an art form. These were people who mummified cats and built monuments that still make modern engineers weep with envy. When they set their minds to solving the snoring problem, they didn't mess around. Egyptian medical papyri from around 1500 BCE contained detailed prescriptions for snoring remedies that read like recipes for extremely unappetizing cocktails. Take the ground horn of a rhinoceros, mix with honey and the tears of a crocodile, add powdered lotus root and the breath of a sacred ibis, consumed under the light of a full moon, while standing on 1 foot facing east. The ancient Egyptians apparently believed that if you were going to cure snoring, you might as well make it an adventure that could potentially kill you in 17 different ways. But the Egyptians weren't just throwing random animal parts at the problem. They had theories. Sophisticated, completely wrong theories, but theories nonetheless. Egyptian physicians believed snoring was caused by an imbalance in the body's natural harmony, specifically an excess of night vapors that became trapped in the throat during sleep. The solution was to create a more balanced internal environment through careful dietary management and strategic application of various oils and tinctures. The wealthy elite of Egyptian society took this very seriously. Pharaohs and nobles employed specialized breath servants, whose job was to monitor their sleep and administer snoring treatments throughout the night. These unfortunate individuals would spend their evenings crouched beside their employer's bed, armed with an arsenal of oils, herbs, and probably a healthy dose of resignation about their career choices. When the snoring started, they would leap into action, applying various concoctions to the sleeper's throat, adjusting their position, or in desperate cases, gently inserting reed tubes into their nostrils to encourage proper airflow. The really wealthy went even further. Some Egyptian tombs contain elaborate sleeping chambers, designed specifically to minimize snoring. These rooms featured sloped floors to encourage side sleeping, strategic placement of incense burners to purify the night air, and even primitive sound dampening techniques using layered tapestries and cushioned walls. Basically, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a luxury sleep clinic, except with more hieroglyphics and considerably more risk of being cursed by forgotten gods. The treatment protocols were extensive and varied depending on social class. Commoners got the basic package: sleep with your head elevated, avoid eating onions after sunset, and chew specific herbs before bed. The middle class could afford more elaborate remedies involving imported spices and blessed amulets. The wealthy got the full treatment: custom, mixed potions, dedicated sleep attendants, and sleeping chambers designed by the same architects who built temples to gods. Egyptian records suggest that snoring was considered not just a medical condition, but a social failing. A person who snored excessively was thought to be spiritually unbalanced, possibly favored by Set, the god of chaos and annoying nighttime disturbances. This meant that chronic snorers often found themselves marginalized in society, passed over for important positions, and generally treated as if they were carrying some sort of supernatural plague. The irony, of course, is that all these elaborate treatments probably made sleeping even more difficult. Try getting a good night's rest with a servant hovering over you, ready to stuff herbs up your nose at the first sign of irregular breathing. Try relaxing when you're wearing a dozen different amulets and have been painted with oils that smell like a combination of rotting fish and burnt flowers. The cure was often worse than the disease, but at least it kept the Egyptian economy humming along nicely. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and the Olympic Games, intellectuals were taking a more analytical approach to the snoring problem. This being Greece, they couldn't just accept snoring as an annoying fact of life. No, they had to analyze it, categorize it, debate it, and probably write several lengthy treatises about its implications for society and the human condition. Greek physicians like Hippocrates, the guy whose name is still making medical students nervous today, classified different types of snoring based on pitch, rhythm, and what they believed to be the underlying cause. There was Zeus snoring, which was deep and thunderous, obviously caused by an abundance of masculine energy. Apollo snoring was melodic and rhythmic, indicating a person of artistic temperament. Dionysus snoring was irregular and chaotic, clearly the result of too much wine and general debauchery. And then there was Hades snoring, which was described as a low, ominous rumble that could supposedly predict death within the household. The Greeks being Greeks, they naturally turned this into a competitive sport. Wealthy citizens would host snoring symposiums, where guests would take turns sleeping while others evaluated and rated the quality of their nocturnal sounds. Winners received olive wreaths and bragging rights. Losers received helpful suggestions about lifestyle changes and probably some very pointed remarks about their character. Greek remedies were refreshingly practical compared to their neighbors' approaches. Instead of relying on magic and divine intervention, they focused on what we might recognize today as lifestyle medicine. Exercise more, drink less wine, sleep on your side, avoid rich foods before bed, and practice specific breathing techniques during the day to strengthen the throat muscles. Revolutionary concepts like, maybe don't eat an entire roasted pig right before lying down, were apparently not obvious to everyone. But the Greeks also contributed something else to snoring history. The first recorded instances of snoring related domestic violence. Court records from Athens contain several cases of citizens being charged with assault after attacking their snoring spouses or roommates. One particularly memorable case involved a potter who threw his entire workshop's worth of clay vessels at his apprentice over the course of a single sleepless night. The judge's verdict was surprisingly sympathetic. While violence is never acceptable, the court recognizes that extreme sleep deprivation can drive even reasonable men to unreasonable actions. Greek playwrights naturally incorporated snoring into their comedies. Aristophanes wrote entire scenes around characters whose snoring was so disruptive it could wake the gods on Mount Olympus. These weren't subtle jokes, either. Greek comedy was about as subtle as a brick to the face, so snoring scenes typically involved elaborate sound effects, exaggerated staging, and audience members who were probably rolling in the aisles at the sheer relatability of the situation. The philosophers got involved too, because of course they did. Plato apparently spent considerable time thinking about whether snoring was a sign of spiritual imbalance or simply a physical manifestation of the soul's connection to the material world. Aristotle, being more practically minded, conducted what might have been the first systematic study of snoring patterns, documenting the sleeping habits of various animals and humans to determine what factors contributed to the condition. His conclusion: some people are just cursed by the gods to be annoying, even in sleep. A Roman society, being the practical, engineering-minded civilization that conquered most of the known world, approached snoring with the same systematic efficiency they brought to building roads and aqueducts. If there was a problem, there had to be a solution, and that solution had to be scalable, efficient, and probably involve some form of military-style organization. Roman military manuals contain detailed sections on managing snoring in barracks and campaign tents. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about military effectiveness. A legion that wasn't getting proper sleep was a liability on the battlefield. Soldiers who were exhausted from being kept awake by their tent mates' nasal symphonies were more likely to make mistakes, react slowly in combat, and generally fail to maintain the high standards of Roman military excellence. The Roman solution was typically Roman systematic, hierarchical, and ruthlessly efficient. Barracks were organized with chronic snorers grouped together in specific sections, ideally downwind, and as far as possible from the majority of the troops. Severe cases were assigned to solo tents or special, snoring cohorts that were positioned at the edges of military camps. Centurions received training in identifying and managing snoring soldiers, including techniques for repositioning sleepers and protocols for when to seek medical intervention. Roman military medicine included specialized treatments for snoring that were surprisingly sophisticated. Army physicians understood that alcohol consumption, weight gain, and poor physical condition all contributed to the problem. Military diet and exercise regimens were designed partly with sleep quality in mind. Soldiers who snored excessively were put on modified duty that included additional physical training, dietary restrictions, and sometimes assignment to special sleep schedules that minimized their impact on unit morale. Civilian Roman society was equally systematic in its approach. Roman households, particularly wealthy ones, employed specific servants whose duties included managing the nighttime environment. These sleep stewards were responsible for monitoring family members' sleep quality, adjusting room temperature and ventilation, and implementing various snoring remedies as needed. The job required extensive knowledge of herbal remedies, positioning techniques, and the delicate social skills necessary to wake up a snoring patriarch without causing offense. Roman remedies combined Greek medical theory with their own practical innovations. They developed the first recorded mechanical devices for addressing snoring. Crude but effective jaw supports designed to keep the mouth closed during sleep, and primitive nasal dilators made from shaped metal or ivory. These devices were often elaborately decorated because even medical equipment had to reflect Roman status and style. The wealthy Romans took snoring treatment to unprecedented levels of luxury and complexity. Elite households featured specially designed sleeping chambers with architectural elements intended to minimize sound transmission and optimize airflow. Some Roman villas included separate sleeping pavilions for family members with chronic snoring problems, complete with dedicated staff and specialized furnishings. Roman physicians classified snoring according to a detailed taxonomy that would make modern sleep specialists proud. They recognized that different types of snoring required different treatments, and they developed corresponding therapeutic protocols. Thunder snoring required aggressive dietary interventions and physical conditioning. Whistle snoring was treated with nasal remedies and breathing exercises. Battle snoring, which apparently sounded like armed combat, was considered a serious medical condition requiring comprehensive lifestyle changes and possibly surgical intervention. The Romans also contributed to snoring folklore in ways that would influence European culture for centuries. They believed that particularly loud snorers were either blessed by Morpheus, the god of dreams, or cursed by Somnus, the god of sleep, depending on whether the snoring seemed peaceful or agitated. Roman families would sometimes consult augurs, religious officials who specialized in interpreting omens, to determine whether a family member's snoring patterns indicated future fortune or disaster. Roman legal codes included provisions for snoring-related disputes. Property law recognized that excessive noise, including snoring, could constitute a nuisance that affected property values. Marriage contracts sometimes included clauses addressing sleep disruption, and divorce proceedings occasionally cited chronic snoring as grounds for dissolution of the marriage. The Romans, ever practical, understood that sleep deprivation could destroy relationships and social harmony. The fall of Rome didn't end systematic approaches to snoring, but it did scatter the knowledge and practices across Europe, where they evolved in different directions as various cultures adapted Roman methods to their own traditions and beliefs. Medieval Europe transformed snoring from a medical and social problem into a complex web of religious, superstitious, and social concerns that reflected the broader anxieties of the age. In a world where disease, war, and famine were constant threats, and where most people believed that supernatural forces directly influenced daily life, snoring couldn't just be a simple physical annoyance. It had to mean something deeper and more ominous. Medieval Christianity added moral dimensions to snoring that hadn't existed before. Church doctrine suggested that excessive snoring might indicate spiritual weakness or susceptibility to demonic influence. The reasoning was typically medieval in its logic. If God wanted humans to sleep peacefully, then disruptive sleep must be the work of opposing forces. Chronic snorers were sometimes viewed with suspicion, particularly if their snoring seemed to follow unusual patterns or occurred alongside other behaviors that the community found troubling. Medieval remedies reflected this religious framework. Parish priests often prescribed spiritual solutions alongside physical ones: increased prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, or donation to the church. The idea was that addressing the spiritual root cause would naturally resolve the physical symptoms. Many medieval Europeans slept with religious relics, sacred texts, or blessed objects intended to protect against both supernatural interference and natural sleep disruption. But medieval society also preserved and adapted classical medical knowledge, particularly through monastery libraries where monks copied and preserved ancient texts. Medieval physicians continued to use many Greek and Roman remedies, often modified with local herbs and practices. Monasteries became centers for developing new approaches to sleep medicine, partly because monastic life required strict adherence to sleep schedules for religious observances. Medieval monasteries faced unique snoring challenges. Religious communities where dozens or hundreds of monks slept in common dormitories had to develop systematic approaches to managing sleep disruption. Monastic rules often included specific protocols for dealing with chronic snorers, repositioning sleeping arrangements, assigning special sleeping locations, or in severe cases, providing individual cells for disruptive sleepers. Medieval medical texts describe snoring remedies that combined ancient wisdom with contemporary religious beliefs and available local materials. A typical prescription might include classical elements like dietary restrictions and positional therapy, combined with Christian elements like blessed herbs and prayer schedules, and local elements like regional plants and traditional practices passed down through generations. The medieval period also saw the development of more sophisticated mechanical approaches to snoring. Craftsmen in various European cities began producing specialized pillows, mattresses, and positioning devices designed to reduce snoring. These weren't mass-produced items, but custom pieces created for wealthy patrons who could afford personalized solutions to their sleep problems. Medieval folklore around snoring was rich and varied, reflecting regional traditions and beliefs. In some areas, snoring was thought to indicate that the sleeper's soul was traveling to other realms, making the sounds of the journey. In others, it suggested that forest spirits or household gods were trying to communicate through the sleeper. Some traditions held that snoring patterns could predict weather, harvests, or other future events. Medieval wives developed an extensive informal network for sharing snoring remedies and coping strategies. These weren't recorded in formal medical texts, but they were passed down through generations of women who had practical experience managing disruptive spouses. Remedies ranged from the herbal to the mechanical to the supernatural, and they often combined elements from all three categories. Medieval legal systems had to address snoring-related disputes, particularly in crowded urban environments where families lived in close quarters. City ordinances sometimes included noise restrictions that could theoretically be applied to chronic snoring, though enforcement was typically informal and community-based rather than official. The medieval period laid important groundwork for later developments in snoring treatment by preserving classical knowledge while adding new cultural and religious dimensions. Medieval approaches emphasized the connection between physical health, spiritual well-being, and community harmony in ways that would influence European attitudes towards sleep disorders for centuries. While medieval Europeans were developing elaborate theological explanations for snoring, other cultures around the world were taking completely different approaches to the same universal human problem. These diverse perspectives offer fascinating insights into how different societies understood sleep, health, and community harmony. Ancient Chinese medicine approached snoring through the lens of energy flow and bodily harmony. Traditional Chinese physicians understood snoring as a manifestation of qi, the vital life energy, becoming blocked or misdirected during sleep. According to Chinese medical theory, healthy sleep should involve smooth, unobstructed energy flow throughout the body. Snoring indicated that this flow was being disrupted, usually by lifestyle factors, emotional stress, or physical imbalances. Chinese remedies focused on restoring proper energy balance through techniques that are still used in traditional Chinese medicine today. Acupuncture treatments targeted specific points believed to regulate breathing and throat function. Herbal formulations were customized for individual patients based on their specific type of energy imbalance. Dietary therapy emphasized foods that would support healthy sleep and reduce factors contributing to airway obstruction. Chinese physicians also developed sophisticated diagnostic techniques for snoring that went far beyond simply listening to the sounds. They analyzed snoring patterns in relation to sleep positions, timing during the night, seasonal variations, and the patient's overall constitution. Different types of snoring were thought to indicate different underlying problems, and treatments were tailored accordingly. Traditional Chinese culture also developed unique social approaches to managing snoring. Extended family compounds, where multiple generations lived together, required careful management of sleeping arrangements to maintain household harmony. Chinese etiquette included elaborate protocols for addressing snoring diplomatically without causing loss of face for the snorer or their family members. Islamic cultures during the medieval period developed their own distinctive approaches to snoring that reflected Islamic medical traditions and social values. Islamic physicians like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wrote extensively about sleep disorders and their treatments. Islamic medical texts described snoring as a condition that could affect both physical health and spiritual practice, since it could interfere with the regular prayer schedule that structured daily life. Islamic remedies emphasized moderation, cleanliness, and spiritual balance. Treatments included specific dietary guidelines based on Islamic nutritional principles, breathing exercises derived from meditation practices, and herbal preparations using plants mentioned in Islamic texts. Islamic physicians also developed surgical techniques for severe cases that were surprisingly advanced for the time period. Islamic culture placed particular emphasis on community harmony and mutual respect, which influenced how snoring was addressed socially. Islamic legal scholars sometimes addressed questions about snoring in the context of marriage law, neighbor relations, and community obligations. The emphasis was on finding solutions that preserved dignity for all parties while addressing practical problems. Japanese traditional medicine approached snoring through concepts of balance and harmony that were different from both Chinese and European traditions. Japanese physicians understood snoring as a disruption of the natural rhythm that should characterize healthy sleep. Japanese treatments often emphasized gentle, gradual interventions designed to restore natural balance rather than aggressive remedies aimed at forcibly stopping the snoring. Japanese culture also developed unique aesthetic approaches to snoring that reflected broader Japanese values about beauty, harmony, and social consideration. Japanese remedies often emphasized grace and elegance in their implementation, with treatment protocols designed to be as aesthetically pleasing as they were medically effective. Native American traditions across different tribes included various approaches to snoring that typically emphasized the connection between physical health and spiritual balance. Many tribal traditions viewed snoring as a sign that the sleeper's spirit was not at rest, often due to unresolved conflicts, spiritual imbalances, or disconnection from natural rhythms. Native American remedies typically included herbal treatments using local plants, ceremonial practices designed to restore spiritual balance, and community-based approaches that addressed snoring as part of broader social and spiritual health. Different tribes developed different specific practices, but most shared the understanding that individual health problems like snoring reflected larger imbalances that affected the entire community. African traditional medicine included diverse approaches to snoring that varied significantly among different ethnic groups and regions. Many African cultures understood snoring in terms of spiritual communication, ancestral influence, or connection to natural forces. Remedies often combined herbal treatments with ritual practices and community interventions. Some African traditions viewed certain types of snoring as potentially positive signs, indicating that the sleeper was in communication with ancestors or spiritual forces. Other types of snoring were seen as problematic, requiring intervention from traditional healers or community elders. The emphasis was typically on understanding the spiritual and social meaning of the snoring, rather than simply trying to eliminate it. Australian Aboriginal traditions included understanding of snoring in the context of dream time and spiritual connection to country. Aboriginal approaches to snoring often emphasize the connection between physical symptoms and spiritual relationships with land, ancestors, and community. Treatments typically involved ceremony, connection to country, and traditional plant medicines. These diverse cultural approaches to snoring demonstrate that while the physical problem is universal, human responses to it have been incredibly varied and creative. Each culture developed approaches that reflected their broader values, medical traditions, and social structures, creating a rich global heritage of snoring remedies and folklore. The Renaissance brought unprecedented changes to European society, including new approaches to understanding and treating medical conditions like snoring. The period's emphasis on scientific observation, individual achievement, and practical innovation created new opportunities for developing more effective snoring treatments, while also complicating the social and cultural meanings attached to the condition. Renaissance physicians had access to a broader range of medical knowledge than their medieval predecessors, including rediscovered classical texts, contemporary Islamic and Byzantine medical works, and observations from explorers returning from other parts of the world. This expanded knowledge base allowed for more sophisticated understanding of snoring as a medical condition, rather than simply a spiritual or moral problem. Renaissance medical schools began teaching systematic approaches to sleep disorders that combined traditional remedies with new anatomical knowledge. Physicians like Andreas Vesalius, who revolutionized understanding of human anatomy, provided new insights into the physical mechanisms of snoring. Renaissance medical texts described the throat and respiratory system in much greater detail than previous works, leading to more targeted treatment approaches. Renaissance society also created new social pressures around snoring that hadn't existed in earlier periods. The period's emphasis on individual achievement and social advancement meant that personal characteristics like chronic snoring could potentially affect career prospects, marriage opportunities, and social status. Renaissance etiquette manuals included advice on managing snoring diplomatically in various social situations. Renaissance technology and craftsmanship enabled the development of more sophisticated mechanical devices for addressing snoring. Renaissance artisans created elaborate sleeping accessories designed to reduce snoring, including specialized pillows, positioning devices, and even early versions of jaw supports and nasal dilators. These devices were often works of art as well as medical equipment, reflecting Renaissance values about beauty and function. Renaissance courts and wealthy households employed specialized servants and medical practitioners whose duties included managing sleep-related problems. These positions required extensive knowledge of contemporary medical theory, practical remedies, and the social skills necessary to address snoring diplomatically without causing embarrassment or offense. Renaissance exploration and trade brought European physicians into contact with remedies and approaches from other cultures. European medical texts from the period began incorporating herbal treatments from the Americas, techniques from Islamic and Asian medical traditions, and observations about how different climates and environments affected snoring patterns. The Renaissance also saw the development of more systematic record keeping about medical conditions, including the first detailed case studies of individual snoring patients. These records provide valuable insights into how snoring was understood and treated during the period, as well as the social and cultural factors that influenced treatment choices. Renaissance art and literature began incorporating snoring into works that reflected broader social concerns and cultural values. Renaissance artists depicted snoring in paintings and sculptures that explored themes of human nature, social relations, and the tensions between public and private behavior. Renaissance writers like Shakespeare included snoring characters in plays that used the condition to explore themes of marriage, family relations, and social hierarchy. The Protestant Reformation created additional religious and moral dimensions to snoring treatment in some parts of Europe. Protestant emphasis on personal responsibility and direct relationship with God sometimes translated into different approaches to medical conditions like snoring. Protestant regions sometimes developed remedies that emphasized individual discipline and moral improvement rather than reliance on external interventions. Renaissance medical schools began teaching formal courses on sleep disorders that included systematic approaches to diagnosis and treatment. These courses combined theoretical knowledge from classical and contemporary sources with practical training in observation, diagnosis, and treatment techniques. Renaissance physicians were expected to understand snoring as part of comprehensive medical knowledge rather than as a specialized or marginal condition. The Renaissance period established many of the foundations for modern approaches to snoring treatment while also creating new social and cultural complications that would persist into later periods. Renaissance emphasis on scientific observation and practical innovation led to more effective treatments, but Renaissance social values also created new pressures and expectations around managing the condition. The scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries brought radical changes to understanding snoring that moved the condition firmly into the realm of natural philosophy and empirical investigation. Scientists and physicians began applying systematic observation, experimentation, and mathematical analysis to sleep disorders, leading to the first truly scientific approaches to understanding and treating snoring. Scientific revolution physicians like William Harvey, who discovered blood circulation, provided new insights into the physiological processes involved in breathing and sleep. These discoveries led to more accurate understanding of why snoring occurred and what interventions might be most effective. Scientific revolution medical texts described snoring in terms of mechanical processes rather than spiritual or moral phenomena. The period's emphasis on systematic observation led to the first detailed studies of snoring patterns and their relationship to various factors like body position, diet, alcohol consumption, and physical health. Physicians began keeping detailed records of patients' snoring patterns and treatment responses, creating the foundation for evidence-based approaches to treatment. Scientific revolution technology enabled the development of new tools for studying and treating snoring. Scientists created devices for measuring breathing patterns, throat anatomy, and sleep quality. These tools allowed for more precise diagnosis and more targeted treatment approaches than had been possible in earlier periods. The scientific revolution also created new theoretical frameworks for understanding snoring that emphasized natural causes and natural remedies. Physicians moved away from supernatural explanations toward mechanical and chemical theories about why snoring occurred and how it could be treated. This shift led to more systematic and potentially more effective treatment approaches. Scientific revolution social values emphasized reason, empirical evidence, and practical effectiveness over tradition and authority. This meant that snoring treatments were increasingly evaluated based on their actual effectiveness, rather than their traditional use or theoretical appeal. Treatments that couldn't demonstrate clear results were gradually abandoned in favor of approaches that produced measurable improvements. The period saw the development of the first scientific societies and medical journals that included research on sleep disorders. These institutions created forums for sharing knowledge about snoring treatments and for debating the relative merits of different approaches. Scientific communication networks allowed physicians across Europe to share observations and compare treatment results. Scientific revolution emphasis on individual observation and experimentation led to more personalized approaches to snoring treatment. Physicians began recognizing that different patients required different treatments based on their specific anatomy, lifestyle, and medical history. This individualized approach was a significant departure from earlier one-size-fits-all treatment methods. The scientific revolution established the foundation for modern medical approaches to snoring, while also creating new social expectations about the role of science and medicine in addressing everyday problems. The period's emphasis on empirical evidence and practical effectiveness continues to influence contemporary approaches to sleep disorders. The 18th and 19th centuries brought the Industrial Revolution, which created unprecedented changes in how people lived, worked, and slept, with profound implications for both the prevalence of snoring and the development of new treatment approaches. Industrial society created new causes of snoring, while also providing new resources for addressing the condition. Industrial Revolution working conditions, particularly in factories and mines, exposed workers to dust, chemicals, and other environmental factors that could contribute to respiratory problems and snoring. Industrial cities with poor air quality and crowded living conditions created environments where snoring problems were likely to be more severe and more common than they had been in pre-industrial rural societies. Industrial Revolution social changes, including urbanization, changing family structures, and new work schedules, created new challenges for managing snoring in daily life. Industrial workers often had to sleep in shifts or in crowded boarding houses where snoring could disrupt many people simultaneously. Industrial society had to develop new social protocols for managing sleep disruption in these new living arrangements. Industrial technology enabled the development of the first mass-produced devices for treating snoring. Industrial manufacturing techniques made it possible to produce standardized pillows, mattresses, and positioning devices at lower costs than had been possible when such items were custom, made by individual craftsmen. Industrial chemistry provided new materials for creating more effective and comfortable devices. Industrial Revolution medicine began developing more systematic and scientific approaches to sleep disorders. 19th century physicians had access to better diagnostic tools, more systematic record-keeping methods, and more extensive professional networks for sharing knowledge about effective treatments. Industrial society's emphasis on efficiency and productivity created new incentives for developing effective snoring treatments. The 19th century saw the establishment of the first specialized sleep clinics and the first medical journals dedicated specifically to sleep disorders. These institutions created formal structures for developing and sharing knowledge about snoring and other sleep problems. The professional medical community began treating sleep disorders as legitimate medical specialties rather than marginal concerns. 19th century social reformers began identifying sleep disruption, including snoring, as a public health issue that affected worker productivity, family stability, and community well-being. Reform movements advocated for better housing standards, workplace regulations, and public health measures that would reduce factors contributing to sleep disorders. Industrial Revolution transportation and communication systems enabled the rapid spread of information about new snoring treatments and remedies. Medical knowledge that once took decades to spread across Europe could now be communicated within months or weeks. This acceleration of knowledge sharing led to more rapid development and refinement of treatment approaches. The Industrial Revolution created the economic and technological foundations for modern approaches to snoring treatment, while also creating new social and environmental challenges that increased the prevalence and severity of the condition. Industrial society had to develop new approaches to managing sleep disorders in the context of unprecedented social and environmental changes. The late 19th and early 20th centuries brought the first systematic scientific research on sleep and breathing disorders, establishing the foundations for modern sleep medicine. This period saw the development of the first objective measurements of sleep quality, breathing patterns, and the effectiveness of various treatments for snoring. Early 20th century physicians began using new technologies like X-rays to study the anatomy of breathing during sleep. These tools provided the first clear visual evidence of what happened in the throat and airway during snoring episodes. This anatomical understanding led to more targeted surgical and non-surgical treatment approaches. The early 20th century also saw the development of the first systematic pharmaceutical approaches to treating snoring. Pharmaceutical companies began developing drugs specifically designed to address the underlying causes of snoring, including medications to reduce throat swelling, improve muscle tone, and address other physiological factors that contributed to the condition. World War I and World War II created unique challenges and opportunities for understanding and treating snoring. Military medicine had to develop efficient approaches to managing sleep disorders in army barracks, navy ships, and other military environments where sleep disruption could affect combat effectiveness. Military physicians developed standardized protocols for diagnosing and treating snoring that were later adapted for civilian use. The wars also provided opportunities for large-scale studies of snoring patterns and treatment effectiveness. Military medical services collected data on thousands of soldiers' sleep patterns and treatment responses, creating the largest databases of information about snoring that had ever been assembled. This data was invaluable for developing more effective treatment approaches. Post-war economic prosperity in developed countries created new markets for consumer products designed to address snoring. The 1950s and 1960s saw the development of the first consumer-oriented anti-snoring devices, including specialized pillows, nasal strips, and positioning aids that were marketed directly to consumers rather than prescribed by physicians. The development of consumer markets for snoring products also created new cultural attitudes toward the condition. Snoring began to be seen as a problem that individuals could and should address through consumer choices rather than simply accepting as an unavoidable part of life. This shift toward consumer-oriented solutions reflected broader cultural changes toward individualism and personal responsibility for health problems. The mid-20th century saw the establishment of the first professional organizations dedicated specifically to sleep medicine. These organizations created formal structures for training physicians in sleep disorders, establishing treatment standards, and conducting research on conditions like snoring. Professional specialization in sleep medicine led to more sophisticated and effective treatment approaches. The 1960s and 1970s brought the first sleep laboratories equipped with sophisticated monitoring equipment that could provide detailed, objective measurements of breathing patterns, sleep quality, and treatment effectiveness. These facilities enabled the development of evidence-based treatment protocols that were more effective than earlier approaches that relied primarily on subjective observations. The late 20th century saw the identification of sleep apnea as a serious medical condition related to snoring. This discovery revolutionized understanding of snoring by demonstrating that what had long been considered simply an annoying social problem could actually be a symptom of a potentially life-threatening medical condition. This recognition led to much more aggressive and systematic approaches to diagnosis and treatment. Contemporary sleep medicine has developed sophisticated understanding of the multiple factors that can contribute to snoring, including anatomy, lifestyle, medical conditions, and environmental factors. Modern treatment approaches are highly individualized and often involve multiple interventions tailored to each patient's specific situation. Modern technology has enabled the development of continuous positive airway pressure machines, surgical techniques, and other interventions that can effectively eliminate snoring in many cases. These treatments represent the culmination of thousands of years of human efforts to understand and address one of our most persistent and universal annoying habits. But despite all this scientific and technological progress, snoring remains a common problem that affects millions of people worldwide. Modern society continues to grapple with the same basic challenges that have frustrated humans throughout history. How to get a good night's sleep when someone nearby is making noise, and how to address the problem diplomatically without destroying relationships. Contemporary approaches to snoring reflect the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of human experience with the condition, combined with cutting-edge scientific understanding and technology that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. Yet somehow, the fundamental human drama remains unchanged. Someone is snoring, someone else can't sleep, and relationships are being tested by the universal challenge of sharing sleeping space with other humans. Modern sleep clinics are marvels of technological sophistication that would impress even the most ambitious ancient Egyptian physician. Contemporary sleep studies involve patients spending the night connected to dozens of sensors that monitor brain waves, heart rate, breathing patterns, oxygen levels, and movement. These studies can provide incredibly detailed information about exactly what happens during snoring episodes and what interventions might be most effective for each individual patient. But here's the beautiful irony: despite all this technological advancement, many of the most effective treatments for snoring are remarkably similar to remedies that have been used for thousands of years. Sleep on your side instead of your back. The ancient Greeks figured that out. Lose weight and exercise more. Roman military physicians were prescribing that combination 2,000 years ago. Avoid alcohol before bedtime. Medieval monks knew that one. Elevate your head while sleeping. The Egyptians built entire sleeping chambers around that principle. Modern pharmaceutical approaches to snoring include a dazzling array of medications designed to address every conceivable underlying cause. There are drugs to reduce throat swelling, medications to improve muscle tone, treatments for allergies and sinus problems, and even hormonal therapies for specific types of snoring. Yet many patients find that simple lifestyle changes are more effective than expensive medications. Contemporary surgical techniques for treating severe snoring are incredibly sophisticated, involving procedures that can reshape the throat, remove excess tissue, or even reposition jaw bones to improve airway function. These surgeries can be highly effective, but they're also expensive, potentially risky, and not always necessary for patients whose snoring could be managed through less invasive means. The development of continuous positive airway pressure machines represents one of the genuine technological breakthroughs in snoring treatment. These devices provide a constant flow of air pressure that keeps airways open during sleep, effectively eliminating snoring for many patients. CPAP machines have revolutionized treatment for sleep apnea and severe snoring, providing a non-invasive solution that can be incredibly effective. Yet CPAP machines also illustrate the persistent challenges of snoring treatment. The devices are effective, but they're also cumbersome, expensive, and require significant lifestyle adjustments. Many patients struggle with compliance, finding the machines uncomfortable or disruptive to their sleep. The technology solves the snoring problem but creates new challenges around comfort, convenience, and relationship dynamics. Modern consumer markets offer an overwhelming array of products, claiming to reduce or eliminate snoring. There are specialized pillows designed to promote side sleeping, nasal strips that open airways, mouth guards that reposition the jaw, throat exercises that strengthen muscles, herbal supplements that reduce inflammation, and even smartphone apps that monitor sleep patterns and provide personalized recommendations. The proliferation of consumer products reflects both the persistent nature of the snoring problem and the continued appeal of simple, inexpensive solutions that people can try at home without medical intervention. Some of these products are genuinely helpful. Others are essentially modern versions of ancient folk remedies with updated marketing, and some are simply useless. The challenge for consumers is sorting through the options to find approaches that actually work. Contemporary understanding of snoring recognizes that the condition often reflects broader lifestyle and health issues. Modern medicine understands that snoring can be related to obesity, alcohol consumption, smoking, allergies, sleep position, stress levels, and various medical conditions. This comprehensive understanding leads to treatment approaches that address the whole person rather than just the immediate symptom. Modern sleep medicine also recognizes the social and relationship dimensions of snoring in ways that earlier periods often ignored. Contemporary treatment approaches often involve both partners in a relationship, recognizing that snoring affects not just the person who snores but also their bed partner. Sleep clinics now routinely provide counseling and support for couples dealing with sleep disruption issues. The internet age has created new opportunities for people to share information about snoring remedies and coping strategies. Online forums and social media groups provide platforms for people to compare experiences with different treatments, share tips for managing sleep disruption, and provide support for others dealing with similar problems. This informal knowledge sharing resembles the traditional networks of information exchange that existed in earlier periods, but with much broader reach and faster communication. Contemporary research on snoring continues to reveal new insights about the condition and potential treatments. Scientists are studying the genetic factors that contribute to snoring, the relationship between snoring and other health problems, and the development of new technologies for diagnosis and treatment. This ongoing research suggests that even more effective treatments may be developed in the future. Yet, despite all this progress, snoring remains a remarkably persistent and universal human problem. Contemporary surveys suggest that snoring affects roughly the same percentage of the population that it always has, and that the basic social and relationship challenges created by snoring remain largely unchanged from what they were thousands of years ago. Modern society has developed elaborate technologies and treatment protocols for addressing snoring, but we haven't solved the fundamental problem of how to sleep peacefully in close proximity to other humans who make noise. We've made the treatments more sophisticated, but the basic human drama remains the same. Someone snores, someone else loses sleep, and relationships get tested. Perhaps this persistence suggests something important about the nature of human problems. Some challenges are technical and can be solved through better understanding and improved technology. Others are more fundamental aspects of the human condition that persist despite our best efforts to eliminate them. Snoring seems to fall into the latter category. The history of snoring treatment demonstrates both human ingenuity and human limitations. Every culture throughout history has developed creative and sometimes effective approaches to managing this universal problem. Yet no culture has completely solved it. The condition persists across all societies, all time periods, and all levels of technological sophistication. This persistence isn't necessarily a failure of human problem-solving abilities. It might instead reflect the fact that some aspects of human existence involve inherent trade-offs that can't be completely eliminated. Sleeping in close proximity to other people provides benefits including safety, warmth, intimacy, and social connection. but it also creates challenges including potential sleep disruption from snoring, movement, and other nighttime behaviors. Traditional approaches to snoring often emphasized managing these trade-offs rather than eliminating them completely. Ancient cultures developed social protocols, architectural solutions, and treatment approaches that reduced the impact of snoring without necessarily expecting to eliminate it entirely. These approaches recognized that some level of accommodation and compromise was necessary for successful communal living. Contemporary approaches sometimes promise more complete solutions than may be realistic or necessary. Modern technology can effectively eliminate snoring in many cases, but these solutions often involve trade-offs in terms of cost, convenience, comfort, or relationship dynamics. The most sophisticated treatments aren't necessarily the most appropriate for every situation. The most successful contemporary approaches to snoring often combine modern understanding with traditional wisdom about managing human relationships and social dynamics. Effective treatment usually involves not just addressing the physical aspects of snoring, but also developing communication strategies, relationship skills, and realistic expectations about what can be achieved. The story of humanity's relationship with snoring is ultimately a story about learning to live together despite our imperfections and annoying habits. Every person who has ever shared sleeping space with a snorer has participated in this ancient human challenge. Every culture that has developed remedies for snoring has contributed to our collective understanding of how to manage one of our most persistent and universal problems. Perhaps the most important lesson from this long history is that snoring, like many human problems, is best addressed through a combination of practical interventions and social wisdom. Technical solutions can help, but they work best when combined with patience, humor, and communication skills and realistic expectations about what can be achieved. The ancient Mesopotamians who first complained about their snoring neighbors on clay tablets would probably recognize the fundamental challenges that contemporary couples face when dealing with sleep disruption. The Romans who organized military barracks to minimize snoring-related problems would understand the logistics of managing the condition in group living situations. The medieval physicians who prescribed elaborate combinations of spiritual and physical remedies would appreciate the complexity of addressing a condition that affects both individual health and social relationships. What they might find surprising is not that we still deal with snoring, but that we sometimes expect to completely eliminate it. Earlier cultures often seem to understand better than we do that some human problems are best managed rather than solved, accommodated rather than eliminated, and approached with humor and patience rather than technological optimism alone. The future of snoring treatment will likely involve even more sophisticated technologies and medical interventions. Scientists continue to develop new approaches that may be more effective, more convenient, and more widely applicable than current treatments. Genetic research may eventually lead to interventions that prevent snoring from developing in the first place. But the fundamental human challenges created by snoring will likely persist regardless of technological advances. As long as humans live together in close proximity, some people will make noise while sleeping and others will be disturbed by that noise. As long as we value both individual comfort and social connection, we'll need to find ways to balance these competing needs. The thousands of years of human experience with snoring provide valuable guidance for approaching this balance. The most successful cultures throughout history have been those that developed effective practical interventions, while also maintaining realistic expectations and strong social skills for managing the inevitable challenges of communal living. Perhaps the ultimate lesson from this long history is that snoring, like many aspects of human existence, is simultaneously a technical problem that can be addressed through practical interventions and a social challenge that requires wisdom, patience, and good humor to manage successfully. The cultures that have dealt most successfully with snoring have been those that understood both dimensions and developed approaches that addressed both the practical and social aspects of the condition. So the next time you find yourself lying awake at 3 a.m, listening to your partner produce sounds that seem to violate several laws of physics, remember that you're participating in one of humanity's oldest and most universal experiences. You're connected to every person throughout history who has faced the same challenge. From ancient Mesopotamian villagers to Roman centurions to medieval monks to your own ancestors. You have access to treatment options that previous generations could never have imagined. From sophisticated medical devices to surgical procedures to pharmaceutical interventions. But you also have access to the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of human experience with managing this challenge. The combination of modern technology and ancient wisdom provides more resources for addressing snoring than any previous generation has ever had. Whether you choose high-tech solutions or time-tested remedies, individual interventions or relationship-based approaches, the key is finding strategies that work for your specific situation while maintaining the humor, patience, and perspective that have helped humans deal with this problem throughout history. After all, if our species has managed to survive and thrive despite thousands of years of nighttime nasal symphonies, there's probably hope for your relationship too. And if all else fails, remember that separate bedrooms have been a respectable solution for thousands of years, from ancient Egyptian sleeping pavilions to contemporary master bedroom suites. Sometimes the wisest approach to an ancient problem is the most practical one. Give everyone enough space to sleep comfortably, and save the togetherness for daytime hours when everyone is awake enough to appreciate it. The history of snoring is ultimately a testament to human adaptability, creativity, and persistence in the face of annoying but persistent challenges. Every culture has found ways to cope, every generation has contributed new solutions, and every relationship has had to navigate the delicate balance between individual needs and communal harmony. This ongoing human story continues today, in bedrooms around the world, where people are discovering their own solutions to one of our most enduring and universal domestic challenges.